It is all kicking off now. I'm actually quite surprised. We've got so much to talk about. News left, right, centre. Players coming back from injury, transfer news, players coming in, players staying, potentially players not going anywhere that we want to go. There's more to discuss. Let's get on with it in today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Apologies for the slightly late start this morning. I know he said something yesterday. I couldn't hear, nothing was coming through these headphones, and it's really distracting when it's good to kind of be able to hear your own voice when you're doing this. I used to never use the headphones, I just used to speak, but it's a lot better being able to hear kind of not just the intros, but the voice levels and how that's coming through, and I just couldn't work out how to do it. So I took some advice from one of our chat members, Claire, who said, have you turned it off and turned it back on again? It worked. Thank you, Claire. Thank you very much. Very much appreciate. You can't help. It was very, very helpful indeed. Good morning to you all. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. Really appreciate you being here. Mike, Adrian, Natty Tom, Black Shine, Afsar. We've got Tabani, Ken, Brian, Claire, Norris, Amber Lee. We've got Grantley Poos and Steve and King and Gary and Barry. Gary and Barry. That's great. I like saying that. It's a nice thing to say. Gary and Barry in the house. Right. Let's kick on, I think, with today's stories. If you could drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with those notifications turned on so you never miss a show. That would be greatly appreciated. So you'd be really doing me a big favor if you could. In fact, I have to say a big thank you because a lot of you have been tuning in recently to the show, which is great to see. 17,000 of you watched yesterday's show, which is absolutely fantastic. So thank you to you all that tuned in. I hope you enjoyed it. It got me thinking as well, because obviously yesterday we had Halftime Hooks on the show, and I quite like the dynamic of doing kind of a show in the morning where it's not just me. So maybe that will become something we look at next season, more having like one day a week, trying to have a guest on for the 8 a.m. show, if anyone's willing to get up as early as I do each day. Yeah, certainly that's going to be something to think about. Anyway, let's jump into our stories for the day, shall we? And you may have already looked on the Arsenal websites this morning, but if you go on to the shop page, you can't. Because all it says is, we'll be back soon. And we all know what that means. As I reported to you this week, Arsenal were set to launch their new home kit, and I broke the news that they are set to wear it against Newcastle this weekend. And as I said on yesterday's show, and I think the day before, I was expecting it to be Thursday, that we would see a release of the kit. And I'm very happy that indeed that has proven to be the case, because this morning you're going to be able to get your hands on that shirt. So I will be getting it, obviously. I always get the home kit as soon as it comes out. And, I am in a position where I'm thinking, who do I get on the back of the shirt? Now, my instinct was Miles Lewis-Skelly. That's the first thought, was Miles Lewis-Skelly. The problem I've got with Miles Lewis-Skelly, who I do want to get on a shirt this season, is if I get him on a shirt now, is there an argument that he changes his number? Now, if I was Miles Lewis-Skelly, I wouldn't change my number. I think 49 is quite the iconic number. It's obviously got Arsenal heritage to it. It works with his song. I think he has to keep the number. If I was him, I would be keeping that number. But, yeah, I'm not sure. It's one to think about. To see. Rich says, I've just read he's not changing it. Okay. Shall we do a quick Google? Changing his number. Lewis-Skelly is keeping his number 49 for the 24-5 seasons, confirmed by Arsenal's club. I mean, that was for 24-5 season. That's last season. I can't see anything about it, but maybe someone's read something. But people are saying he's not changing it. Charles Watts mentioned that he won't be changing his shirt number. Okay. Walls is telling us. If Walls says it, it must be true. That's all I can say. That's what I've come to learn. So Maybe it will be safe, but maybe is this kind of a devious plan? Because he knows that I want Lewis Skelly on the back of my shirt. Is this part of a devious plan? Would he put his reputation on the line just to embarrass an investment of mine? The answer to that I think we all know is yes. So I've got to think long and hard about this. But certainly Lewis Skelly is one to think about. That is for sure. I think for a lot of people this season as well. Big news, though, from the open training session yesterday, of which I saw a lot of people were in attendance for, which was nice to see. Kai Havertz back in training. Really good news that, to see Havertz back on the field. Whether or not he plays any minutes in either this weekend or the final match of the season, of course, remains to be seen. But it is great to see him there. It is great to see him involved. And, of course, I'll be at the press conference tomorrow to hear from Mikel Arteta ahead of the game against Newcastle. Very much looking forward to that. Looking forward to getting back up there. I tell you what, though, the last few times I've been to the press conference, and I'm going to do a really old dad thing right now. The journeys home have not been enjoyable. There's something to be said about the M25 these days that I can't speak about without getting annoyed. And it's it's an early afternoon press conference like it was for the other one. And I didn't get home until for 3-4 hours later. And I was just thinking, my goodness me, every season we're doing what? How many games are there? About 50. And we have a press conference before each one, 50 press conferences, 50 journeys around that M25. I know a lot of people do a lot more than that, but oh, goodness gracious me, M25 is just, yes, as Claire points out, a huge car park. And that is a sign that I'm going to be moving to North London. I've only just moved to South London. So I can't start thinking about moving again. But the M25 is a killer. But Havertz being back is very good news, and we'll hear from Arteta about that tomorrow. Florian Plettenberg has reported that Arsenal have added Juan Jimenez. He looks like, I think he's Argentinian, it looks like. So I'm going to assume it's Jimenez. But it's the Spanish Z. It would be a sound. Maybe some of our Spanish listeners will tell me. But Juan Jimenez and Victor Valdepeñas, a Real Madrid youngster, have been added to Arsenal's shortlists. Both players are being monitored. They are seen as potential transfer targets for the future. And Jimenez is also on the radar of Borussia Dortmund and other top clubs as well. Can't say I know anything about these players, or I can't say if this is accurate or not, but it's an interesting story. And Arsenal, of course, with Andrea Berta in charge, there was a feeling that he might look into the youngster market as well. So, it's an interesting story to keep an eye on with two young players the club are keen on as they continue to broaden their young range of players. Sam Dean at The Telegraph reporting, of course, that Arsenal are interested, among some other clubs, in Brighton forward Joao Pedro. Joao Pedro, of course, who's had a very good season with Brighton, and having since moved to the Amex from Watford in 2023, has been very solid. I mean, 10 goals and 6 assists in his 27 games this season, less than 2,000 minutes played across those goals and assists, 16 goal contributions in those minutes. Last season, he ended the campaign on 20 goals and 3 assists for Brighton, playing, of course, in the Europa League as well. And it's fair to say Joao Pedro's he's really established himself in the Premier League. 23 years of age now. I'm not sure if he's the guy that Arsenal would go for to be their new centre forward, but certainly he's a versatile player that can play in a number of different positions. The issue with Joao Pedro, as many people I imagine are already frantically typing into the chat box, is his injury history, which he suffered with injuries before. He has only missed, according to Transfermarkt, just looking now, 1 game this season through injury, which was an ankle problem. In 23-24, he missed 11 matches for Brazil and for Brighton because of a hamstring problem. He was not in the squad at the start of the season, though, but there's no reason given. But he has been involved since, September. No, sorry. He was involved at the start of the season in August. He missed October and the end of September and the start of November, but has been fit ever since. And the only reason he's not playing most recently is because of a red card suspension, which he received against Brentford. So I mean, is he that injury prone? That doesn't really strike me as an injury prone player, really. But also there was that note that he did kind of violently elbow someone. It wasn't punished for it, but that wasn't great. So there's a question mark of his attitude. And of course, he is the one that William Saliba grazed with his head in the box when trying to head a ball that gave away a penalty. And he made a meal of that. So I can't say I'm necessarily the biggest fan, but I don't necessarily agree that he's injury prone. I don't think that's a fair representation of the Brazilian, but he's still been doing pretty well for Brighton since making that switch to the Premier League. But the big story of today is that Real Madrid have agreed conditions with Bournemouth over a move of Dean Huijsen, the Dutch born, I think, or certainly Dutch heritage, but Spanish international. Yeah, born in Amsterdam, but now a Spanish senior international. Has been having an excellent season. Arsenal were considered to be one of the clubs also interested in Dean Huijsen. But his 50 million release clause will be paid by the end of 2026, and the deal has been done between the clubs. The final green light, reports Fabrizio Romano, is needed to proceed, and the deal with the players' camp as Huijsen always gave priority to Madrid. The reason this is relevant for Arsenal is not only because Arsenal have had an interest in the player, but of course, this is a boost for Arsenal regarding William Saliba. Now, we know that Real Madrid have wanted to sign a defender during this window. It was suggested that they had a short list of 3 players. Huijsen, Saliba, and Ibrahima Konate was said to be those players that they were very keen on. But the fact that they are now landing Dean Huijsen would give me plenty of confidence that Saliba's future, at least in the immediate term, hopefully still remains with Arsenal. And they have since landed their player. Ray Beam, I've been given pretty good information. It is pronounced Huijsen. So from someone who is indeed Dutch. So I'm going to go with that. That is how you pronounce his name. But I imagine that he's probably, when he's spoken to English media, given the English pronunciation of it. But I prefer going with the way in which it's that Dutch pronunciation of it. So Huijsen, it is. But certainly looking at that, I mean, they've got a lot of injured players right now, Real Madrid, in the back line. Militao, of course, has been out for the majority of the season with a serious knee injury. He is expected to return in August for the new season. They've got, of course, young defender Raul Asensio, who they rate very highly indeed. Antonio Rudiger is also out and is not expected to return until after the season is finished. David Alaba has also been injured, but there's no expectation that Rudiger will be leaving the club, I don't think, at this stage. And Dean Huijsen will be joining the club along with plenty of it. So looking forward to it. And yeah, very much looking forward to seeing Saliba now. Hopefully, we can only hope, stay with the club. At least that has to be the plan. That has to be what we have to hope happens after this. Right, let's move to part 2, shall we? Your questions and more right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of today's show. And I'm looking forward to getting some of your questions, of course, in the chat box. Always a pleasure to tackle as many of them as I can. If you've indeed got some that you would like to throw them into. And now is the time to do so. So chuck them in and we'll go through as many of them as I can. I can see everyone's now fighting over how you pronounce Dean Huijsen's name. All I'm saying is I've got a very good person I trust when it comes to Dutch pronunciations, being Dutch himself. And he told me very confidently that it's Huijsen. So I'm going to go with Huijsen. And, you know, it's just not me just running with what I think. I'm going with what my Dutch mate of mine has told me. So there you go. Brendan says, did you see the sneaky photos of Saliba in the home kit? I did see them. Yes. I mean, that is some impressive kind of, that's some impressive levels of, I don't know what the right word is. Sneakiness. I guess, sneakiness. It looks like the picture's taken. He's like up in the vents. They look like they're up in the vents, this person. Incredible dedication to kind of leak the kit. We already seen the kit. We all know how, of course, it was going to look because it's been leaked for quite some time. I look forward to the video, of course, that's coming out today with it. But yeah, quite the quite the well, yeah, you know, it is quite the achievement, let's say, to be able to have snuck such a photo. Sneaked, snuck. I don't know. I think less about pronunciating words today. Pronunciating, goodness me, pronouncing words today. Samuel says, Tom, a while ago, you seemed to suggest that Calafiori's place in the club was not necessarily secure. Are you able to elaborate on that? I think I was just talking about his place in the starting 11, Samuel, to be honest. Because, of course, Lewis Skelly is, as is. We've heard that there has been interest, of course, from Italy. We know that there are clubs in Italy that still remain very, very keen on him. Arsenal don't want to sell him, that's for sure. But, you know, Arsenal are always open to a market opportunity. And if someone was to come in and offer a silly amount of money, I'm not saying that they are going to, you know, reject it. Let's just put it that way. I think that's probably the best way to put it in these terms. Red Skull says, Tom, do you think Arsenal should sign Amari Huijsen? Is that meant to be Amari Hutchinson? If so, no, I don't. Roy says, Tom, if we got Joao Pedro, would he actually now get penalised for delaying games for kicking the ball away? Almost certainly, Roy. Almost certainly, my friend. Yes, that would happen. Gary says, Tom, are we still going to receive 25 million for Ramsdale from Southampton, even if they've been relegated? No, we won't. There is add-ons include, I think it's 20, is it 17 and a half plus? What was it? Let me find it. It's been a long time since we reported that story. Add-ons. Where is it? I'm trying to find it for you. 18 million was the initial, and then it will include add-ons that rise to 25. Only 1 million of that was if they avoid relegation, it says. So that is the information that we reported on FL back in end of August last year. So I don't know how much of the 7 million add-ons, only 1 million of that was for a relegation avoidance, which obviously has not happened. But I imagine that some of it will have been for appearances, saves, maybe. Sell-on clause. I'd be almost certain there's a sell-on clause in that deal because Arsenal put them in pretty much every deal that they do. So not that whole 25 million, no, but obviously the vast majority of it, yes. Sheppo says, Tom, why are you not talking about the Rodrigo links? I'd suggest maybe going on yesterday's show. Sheppo. Red Skull says, Tom, do you think Arsenal... No, we've done that one. Galvo says, Tom, who do you think of reputable journalists like you interacting and engaging with YouTubers who are going down the Arteta route stuff for clicks and giving them credibility by trying to discuss calmly? I mean, am I a reputable journalist? I hope so. But I've always done... YouTube has been where I started. YouTube's where I've begun. I don't like the kind of drawing a line between the two. So many of us who are in this space do YouTube. Charles, of course, does it. In fact, Charles has got a brand new show on his Patreon. If you want to go and support him. Sorry, Wiles. Wiles has got a new show. He's going to kill me. There was Simon Collins and Sam Dean, if you want to check it out on his channel. Harry started off in YouTube, gone through, is now BBC Radio London commentator, has got his show on TalkSport too. Like, I mean, come on. I don't like this idea of drawing a line between YouTube and journalism. I think that in 2025, they overlap, they interact. They are part and part of what it is. Also, I think it's important to broaden yourself to differing opinions. You know, as long as it's a calm discussion, as long as it's a reasonable debate, as long as it's done respectfully, I don't see the issue, really, to be honest. So, I don't know what Galvo... I mean, say what you mean and mean what you say. Tell me who you're talking about. I haven't got a clue what you're on about. If you're talking about hooks yesterday, which wouldn't make sense because I think actually he's been pretty positive at times about Arteta. At least that's what we were talking about yesterday a little bit, and that his mind's changed a bit. It's gone back and forth on something. And, there's this thing as well about kind of like this adamance that people shouldn't change their minds. I went from like 60-40 on Gyökeres and Sesko to 50-50 the other day. I had someone leave a comment saying, "Tom, why have you changed your mind on those?" Because I can. Because I'm allowed. We have a mind. What's the point of having one if you can't change it? It's this strange thing, isn't it, in society today, where like, but it's almost like you're lambasted if your mind changes. There's nothing wrong with admitting you're wrong. It's the reason why Hooks was on yesterday. I hold my hands up. I thought I was wrong in the way I discussed the show on Tuesday, and as a result, I was like, I'm going to reflect on this. And you know what? I'm wrong here, and I'm going to action that. So I always find it a bit strange as well. People like to draw battle lines. I really don't. I'm not keen on that at all. I don't think it's sides. I think you can stand openly on a point. Like yesterday, for instance, if you haven't watched it, go over to Harry's channel, Chronicles, just talking about. Did a show with Sophie talking about Mikel Arteta and the idea that Mikel Arteta has something of a cult following. And all the show was about was like discussing this phenomenon, right? Discussing this idea. It wasn't a case of like lambasting anyone who's Arteta in, or saying that anyone who's Arteta out is right, or saying that you categorically cannot criticize someone or you must criticize someone. It was a discussion podcast. It was about discussing the point. It was about having an open and honest conversation. My goodness me, people overreacted to it. I shouldn't be surprised, should I? Like, it's the internet. Everyone overreacts about everything. I overreact about stuff. I couldn't believe the response that show was getting. I thought it was a really interesting listen. I didn't agree with all of it. I didn't agree with all of it at all. But I didn't lose my rag so much I felt the need to I retweeted the show because I thought it was a really interesting listen. I like challenging myself with points of view that I'm not usually familiar with or necessarily agree with. It helps me to better formulate my own arguments, to better round my opinion on a topic, to be better equipped at tackling something. If I've heard something I don't agree with, I've then got the time to think about why I don't agree with it. It's so strange how people go in so hard on things without having a long think about it first. Some people sadly went a little bit too far in the way they spoke about Sophie in particular yesterday. Gary says, Tom, what's your thoughts on this Rodrigo noise? Do you know what my first thought is? I can't, and this is me being so petty. This is like me going down the Atletico Madrid and Athletic Club scenario. Rodrigo is spelt with a Y. There is no I in Rodrigo's name. And I'm not having a go at you, Gary. You're not the only one who's done it, but it really gets on my nerves. It's spelled Rodrygo. Okay? So let's get that into our minds. It's that thing. I've just got this thing about Atletico Madrid, people calling it ATH. There's no H. There's no H at all anywhere in Atletico Madrid. So let's keep the letter H out of it. And then it's not Athletic Bilbao. It's Athletic Club in Bilbao. So it's one of those things. But Gary says, what's your thoughts on Rodrigo's noise? I can't see a world where we drop over 80 million on him. Why do you think there's so many outlets feeding this story? Because there's a player there that could move this summer. Arsenal are a team that are on the market for a wide player. They're a team that love a market opportunity, as we've seen before. I wrote a story about Rodrigo yesterday. I said that a move for Rodrigo, and I said this on the show yesterday as well, and it really reminds me of when Arsenal moved for Alexis Sanchez. It really reminds me of that type of scenario where one of the big Spanish clubs have signed some big players recently, like Jude Bellingham and Mbappe. They're bringing through a young player like Arda Güler. They've got Brahim Diaz at the club. They've got Vinny Jr. already there. And with Alexis Sanchez, Barcelona went out and signed Neymar the season before. And then the summer that they sold Alexis, they signed Luis Suarez. So it reminds me a lot of that situation. And I think that means that there is absolutely a reason why Arsenal would be interested in Rodrigo. They like those market opportunities. And I think that's why you're seeing those links. And, it is, I think that's worth. I think it's worth exploring because he's a very talented player. And Gary says, sorry, mate, I'll endeavour to change the spelling. You could never offend me. Good, I'm glad. But me having your spelling, having names and stuff corrected or pronunciations corrected should never offend anyone, really. It really, really shouldn't. If it's done in a respectful way, if you go, you idiot, spell it correctly, that's a bit different, or aggressively, but, you know, people can be so precious, can't they? Not you, Gary, though. Rich says, Tom, I worry that if we pass on Sesko, that we might regret it in a decade's time. Just like with Isak, can you reassure me? No, not really, Rich. I have no way of foreseeing the future. If we end up going for Gyökeres and not Sesko, and Sesko's the better player, we may end up regretting it. I don't think there's enough evidence either way right now. That's the problem in determining who is, without a doubt, the better player to sign. That's the problem that we've got. With both players, there are risks, pretty well-established risks that we've gone over time and time again. So I'm really sorry, Rich, but no, I can't reassure you. All I can say is that it's pretty tight right now in terms of who we should sign in general in that position. So I'm finding it much less. I'm finding it less concerning that I might be regretting a deal done, because at the point where we might sign one of them, the arguments between the two are so thin. So I don't think it's one that we could end up regretting and looking back and going, because with Isak, it's not like we didn't sign him and then signed someone else, really. You know, we just didn't sign him. We later on signed players like Jesus and, or earlier on like Jesus and Havertz. With Isak, it wasn't necessarily the same thing, and it's kind of like the price. And I think the price between Sesko and Gyökeres is pretty similar. So yeah, I'm not sure. OG says, shouting into the ether, now that Havertz. I think it's a pretty genuine question, so I'm not going to shout it. And earning as much as he earns, which wages are always the worst reported thing in the world, so I wouldn't go too much on that. He is definitely, I think, one of the highest paid players at the club. Bonuses for some players could take them over him, but he's not been playing for like months. Arsenal won't have been paying that much anyway. It's appearance bonuses, goal bonuses, all this stuff. Would you sell him knowing what we have? No, I wouldn't. I think Havertz is a really important part of this squad and needs to stay. Galvo says it's a follow-up. It was about the Harry and Sophie thing I was referencing. I thought the cult stuff was a bit lazy and misinformed. The feeds into that thing of creating a division when we're doing well. I think I don't think it did. I think it was just a podcast discussing the question of whether Arteta has a cult following. And I don't necessarily disagree, but I think it's just kind of that word that stands out. For some people, Mikel Arteta is utterly and entirely beyond criticism. And I think what adds weight to that whole podcast is that Harry did it. I think that's what adds real weight. If it was done by somebody who is like, with all the love and respect in the world, if Dan Potts did it, right, who is obviously we know to be someone who's very critical of Arteta, and, you know, would, after us being knocked out of the Champions League, would get rid of him. If Potsy did it, I don't think it would hold the same weight, because we know that, and that's not an insult to Dan. That's just the context of Dan's position on Arteta. And then you've got someone like Harry, who, of course, is somebody well known to be a very supportive figure of Mikel Arteta, someone who is on his show describes himself as saying, you know, he's been called Arteta's lawyer. He's been told that, you know, X, Y, and Z insult about his position on Arteta. And I think the fact that it was Harry that did the show with Sophie adds more weight and context to that discussion, you know? The same would happen if Potsy did the show with Harry. You know, it'd be the same thing, because you've brought somebody on who's talking about that idea. But the fact that Harry hosted the show with Sophie to have that discussion, I think adds context to that discussion. It adds weight to that discussion. So I get where you're coming from. I understand where you're coming from. And I know that people are like, don't like the idea of creating division. I don't think the show was about creating division. And if you've watched enough of Harry or Sophie's content, you will know that that is never, ever, ever their intention, two of the most genuine people I've ever met. Yes, I'm a little biased because they're two of my closest friends, but I know neither of them speak about Arsenal for their own gain. Arsenal, their love for the club, their fandom of the club supersedes everything. Yes, of course, they work and earn in and around the sphere of Arsenal, just like I do. But it's about Arsenal being the priority, but still being able to have those conversations. So, no, I don't think it fed division. I thought it was a really interesting topic because let's be honest, those people do exist. People do support Arteta regardless of what happens. Harry said in that show, and I was listening to it, we sat in that press conference after the PSG game, and when Arteta was saying that we were the best team in the competition, we looked at each other and were like, what? And I tweeted after the game as well. I came out of the game itself pretty humbled. I felt, yeah, PSG were the better team. They deserved to go through. We had chances. We didn't take them. PSG took theirs. Luis Enrique was spot on in what he said. They were the better team. Obviously, you've got people like this who have absolutely no place in any discussion because they can't talk about a manager respectfully. They can't have a respectful conversation. But yeah, I came out of the press conference feeling worse than when I came out of the game. That's how I felt coming out of the press conference. I felt worse after coming out of the press because I just felt as though we didn't take account. I didn't feel the accountability that I thought it needed. We lost that game in the first leg. We weren't good enough. And then Arteta does a press conference after the Liverpool game. And ironically, I thought he was too harsh. So, it's funny how things work, isn't it? There's 1 week, less than a week between two pressers. And I felt entirely differently after hearing two different types of things from Arteta. And that's just being human, isn't it? It's just how we respond to things, how we absorb information, how we listen to it and take it in and form an opinion on it. I felt worse coming out of the press conference after PSG, but I thought he was too harsh on the players for their comeback against Liverpool. Yes, criticised them for the first half, which was not good enough. But in the second half, when they came back and he said it made him feel worse, I was like, really? So, I don't know. It's a tough gig. It's a tough gig for Mikel. And answering questions after games of such emotional kind of rawness, don't necessarily always give you the best, almost kind of clear view of what they actually think when they can have a chance to step back and reflect. So, yeah, but I thought the reaction to the show that Harry and Sophie did was way over the top. So I thought it was a really good bit of discussion. As I said, didn't agree with all of it. That's fine. I'm not going to lose my rag and start tweeting indirectly about people on social media or being sexist about people online. It's just not me. Chino says, we can tell that Arteta is so frustrated by how the season has turned out and is starting to feel the pressure. Next season will be the one where he will be judged. I know that people hate the whole next season thing, and I get it. And I know that social media and punditry, especially, you got like kind of people like Patrice Evra now riling kind of up this next season Netflix tagline that Arsenal have. What Arsenal have done over the last... In fact, I saw an amazing video. As a fan, I'm sorry, I really wish I could give them credit. But it was a fan basically talking about... I don't even know if they were an Arsenal fan, to be fair. Talking about Arsenal and how people are talking about them, talking about the money spent since Arteta arrived compared to Spurs and United and Chelsea, and looking what Arsenal have done with that money since they've come in, since that money's been spent since Arteta arrived, and the money that those clubs have spent, seeing where those teams are. And it's Arsenal that have joined Liverpool and City in the title race. Those clubs have not. In fact, many of them have gone much further backwards. And it's kind of this broader debate, if you like, about kind of the Arsenal position and where Arsenal are. Oh my goodness me. So it's just a really funny comment. Dr. Funky Punk says, Sir Alex took 6 years to win his first Premier League title. Klopp took 4 years. This Arteta out nonsense is just that. If he left, look, I genuinely don't think that anyone that has been watching Arsenal and is an Arsenal fan and following them over the last 5 years since Arteta came in could really look and has been like, I has wanted Arteta to stay. I don't think anything that's happened over the last 3 seasons has changed the minds of anybody, really. I can't believe that would happen. But I can believe that people that wanted him out before those 3 years begun still want him out now. I can believe that. But I can't believe that these last 3 years would have changed anybody's mind for the worse. Because what Arsenal have done these last 3 years, especially this season in the broader context of what we've dealt with, is mental. Absolutely mental that Arsenal sat in 2 semi-finals and still set second in the league, considering what's happened to us. It's nuts. And I just hope that they go out into the window in the summer and back the guy. They need to back it. They need to bring in the players that we need. Chris has been a member now for 57 months. Now, that's loyalty. Says, do these chats still work? Hope you're well, Tom. They do indeed, Chris. They do indeed. Thank you for being a member with us for so long. That is dedication. One of our longest serving members on the channel. Brilliant stuff. Harvey says, I would rather be in our position than United, Spurs, or Chelsea. Exactly. Rich says, do you think City can come back next season? I think that question answers itself, does it not, Rich? Yeah, of course. They look like they're going to go and spend a lot of money this summer as well. Yeah, of course, so they can come back. Lynn says, this is the difference between the North and South. The fans up there back the club regardless. Down here, some of our fan base are only concerned in how much they dislike Arteta, which was ridiculous. I don't know what you mean about the North and South, Lynn. Do you mean like the country, like the northern clubs have a more like dedicated fan base? I mean, I've seen a lot of Man United fans who do live up north lose their heads and are only concerned about how much they dislike their manager. So I'm not necessarily sure, Lynn. There is a cultural divide in England between the north and south. I think that's pretty well established, and but I don't know whether or not that's the case here. I don't know. Della says, Tom, what's your ideal forward line next season after transfer window? Honestly, dream scenario would be Saka, Isak, and Rodrigo. Like that would, imagine that. Like that would be incredible. But it's more likely to be Saka, one of Gyökeres or Sesko, and a Nico Williams. If it can be one of Gyökeres or Sesko and Rodrigo, like Rodrigo would be the number one, I think, pick. Just because that caliber of signing would be huge for Arsenal alongside a centre forward. Nico Williams would be great. Barcola is, for me, another dream option, but I don't think is realistic necessarily. So, yeah, it's difficult. Carl says, I disagree. We are a very loyal fan base with managers. I don't think that what Lynn's saying is saying that you're not that way inclined. I just think that the argument is that are there more? The North-South divide, being a former geography teacher, is something that is very well established in the UK for a number of reasons, socioeconomic, political, all of that stuff. So I kind of understand where it comes from, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's true, is what I would say. Claire says, you Southerners spend all your time saying it's cold. That's the cultural difference. I mean, it's warmer down here a lot more of the year. So when it gets a bit chilly, of course, naturally that makes us a little bit more sensitive to the weather. I have no problem in saying that whatsoever. But hey, I love living down south. It's great. It's great. Obviously, Tom, is Rodrigo left or right-footed? Right-footed. But he plays majority of games on the right, but is, I think, what most people would describe as naturally a left winger and would be better playing on the left. He would invert. So, yeah, I think he's pretty good with both feet, though, to be fair. I've seen him hit plenty of shots with his left foot. Playing on the right has meant he's had to develop his left foot quite a bit. Chris says the kit pics have just released on Twitter. Arsenal releasing there. Have Arsenal released it? Yeah. Let's have a look. Arsenal website. It's quarter 2. Yes, they have. Nice. There's that's quite graphic, isn't it? It's like a heart beating. But yeah, there's the new kit. Ethan Waneri is the I'm talking you through this. You'll be able to watch themselves. Ethan Waneri being the kind of the poster boy for the start of the video. Collaboration between the men's and women's teams. Slotted with a Moy in there. I wonder if we'll see any familiar faces outside of the players involved in this. One to have a look at. But yeah, it's quite a good video actually. Go and check it out after today's stream. Who am I going to get on the? I think it's going to be Lewis Skelly. I think it's probably going to be Lewis Skelly, isn't it? I really like it for the record. I think the kit's great. I think the Gothic A symbol across it's really nice. I like that we're back to the red and white pure. I don't necessarily like other colours being on the kit, like the blue this season. The gold last season I could forgive because it was a celebration of the 20 years of Invincibles. But yeah, red and white. Red and white all the way. Keep it red and white. Carl says Real Madrid have 3 of the best left wingers in the world. Such a Real Madrid problem to have. Absolutely. Nike says, could the price tag for Rodrigo drop? He isn't too happy. I don't know what the price tag is at the moment, but there's been suggestions of like 100 million euros. So that would, I think, need to drop for Arsenal to come down. Claire says, I've told myself I'm not buying any more kits until we win the league. Now I've seen the home kit. ... Maybe not so sure. King says, are there any leaks about the away kit? I think there have been leaks. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you'd be able to find some online. It always happens. Things get leaked. It's a shame, really, like, because it would be great if there could be a surprise about it, but it's impossible, I think, these days. Someone always leaks it. People are willing to climb into the ventilation systems of the Emirates to get pictures of the players these days. So it's nearly impossible. The way cameras are, technology is, it's nearly impossible to keep everything quiet and secret. And says, Tom, in your opinion, what creative midfielder would you go for? Eze would be the one I'd go for. Gary says, Tom, I've been watching clips since we've been linked to Andre Santos. He's had great... Andre's got a Y in it, Gary. Otherwise, you're talking about the Brazilian left-back we used to sign. They're very different. But the midfielder, of course, who's currently on loan from Chelsea at Strasbourg, does this tie in with reports of an experienced CDM or a younger profile? I've not heard anything on that, Gary, to be honest, the Andre Santos stuff. I've heard nothing to suggest that that's the case. Doesn't mean it's not true, of course, but I've heard nothing. Joe says, Tom, Lokonga seems to be coming back. Keep selling. What about Vieira? Yeah, it doesn't seem Sevilla are going to be keeping hold of Lokonga in the end, which is a shame. Arsenal are going to have to look to try and sell him in the summer and get as much as they can for him. On Vieira, I expect him to be sold probably as well. Raf says, why do you think the media have a negative view on Arsenal? Is it as simple as a North bias? Money spent, players getting unfair treatment, Arteta's pressure, bottlers, players leaving? It's just always been that way, Raf. Like it's always been that way. I've never not known Arsenal to be widely criticised broadly in the media. We've just always been a club that has been kind of like we don't help ourselves. Like, we have to be honest as well. Like, socially, our fan base are on social media is a different level in terms of cringiness. Like, let's be real. We don't help ourselves. But if we're talking about just the club, the footballers, the manager, ignore the fan stuff for a second. Like, we've always been just very disliked. That's just always been the case. Again, is it this north-south thing? I don't know. I don't really like drawing these battle lines, but I know it exists. But yeah, it's just always been that way. It's always been that way. We've just got to try and stand up to it. And I think obviously there's a bit of a feedback loop, isn't there? Because people have a go at you, you bite back, they hit back harder, and so on and so forth, and it builds up into, something a little bit more serious, I guess. So yeah, but it's always been that way. Because the more successful you are as a club, and Arsenal are a very successful club, we're doing it with a very young manager. We put ourselves back into contention without necessarily doing what some of the clubs like City or Chelsea, to a lesser extent Liverpool, have done. So yeah, I there's a lot to do with it. There's a lot to. It's almost a case of like, you shouldn't be here. That's kind of it. It's like, who are you type thing. Who are Arsenal to do it? You haven't got the heritage of Liverpool or Manchester United. There's always a bit of a who are you type attitude, but yeah, I think let them hate. Let them hate. We move. We keep on doing what we do, and fingers crossed we can deliver it. Gary says, I have to say I'm disgusted with the abuse Miles Lewis-Skelly received for supposedly not clapping during the Guard of Honor, even though there was evidence to the contrary. I saw him clap. I don't know what that bollocks is about. People just see a one little clip. Maybe he held his hands for like a couple of seconds or the camera was on him. I haven't even really seen the clip, but I was there. It was right behind the Guard of Honor. I could see him clear as day. He was clapping. I don't know what people are talking about. Absolute losers. People trying to create a narrative that doesn't exist. Harvest is the most important thing for this transfer window is good quality squad players, especially in midfield. I agree. Roy says, wow, optimism. Just went on the website. You can get a Netto shirt. Money well spent. Really? Oh, goodness. Goodness gracious. Anyway, we're going to end the show there. Thank you so much, everybody that's been tuning in. Really appreciate your time. Go and grab yourself that new kit if you're planning on it. Let us know who you're going to get on the back. And I'll see you tomorrow morning ahead of course, Mikel Arteta's press conference. Hopefully, we'll be dropping some more news throughout the day that we'll be reacting to as well. And enjoy your Thursday, nearly at the end of the week. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.